Power School. If you are not, you can still do that, but that way you'll get credit. All right, so good morning, everybody. If you haven't already met me or seen me before, I'm Kimberly Baker, and I'm an education specialist here at the AMSTI and Special Ed Services. I spent the last 10 years before I came here working at the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. I started there as a math teacher at the Alabama School for the Deaf, and then most recently I worked in their outreach program. And in that position, I went all over the state doing technical assistance and PD and that type of thing to support LEAs that had students that had hearing loss. I'm a certified school psychometrist, and I utilized that certification a lot in my last position where I did a lot of evaluations for LEAs and helped them to serve students with hearing loss or who were deafblind. So that is a little bit about me, and I'll let Elizabeth introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hammonds, and I'm also an education specialist at the State Department. Prior to taking this job, I was a math specialist out of the University of South Alabama and had the opportunity to coach teachers from 6th through 12th grade math in their school and in their settings, and provide anything that they would need with the Alabama Math, Science, and Technology Initiative, AMSTI, and that's currently the branch I work for in the State Department as well. Prior to coaching 6-12 math teachers for 4 years, I was also in the classroom as a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math teacher down in Mobile County Public School System. And then prior to that, I was an engineer at Hyundai Motor Manufacturing here in Montgomery. That's a little bit about myself, and I am very excited to share with y'all today about proficiency skills and differentiating instruction.
All right, we're going to prompt you to sign into the chat. Even if you are in Power School, still put your name and your system in the chat, just kind of as an attendance type thing, so we can keep track of everybody. Our objectives today that we will list for you guys so you kind of know what you're getting into. We want you to understand the purpose and the benefits of proficiency scales. We want you to understand the roles of the general ed and the special ed teacher. And then we want to consider how general and special education teachers can collaborate together and promote better student outcomes. And you can feel free to keep putting your name and your system there in the chat. This quote, I always like to do some type of inspiring quote when we do trainings, and this one I really liked. It says, "One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world." And this was attributed to Malala Yousafzai, and I hope I'm saying that right. And you probably have seen her before in the news, but she's a Pakistani education advocate. When she was 17, which I think was in 2014, she was the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize after she survived an assassination attempt by the Taliban. So that's just background on her a little bit. But this quote I really like. I think it's something to think about because things that may seem like little things that we can do each day with our students really can make a big impact.
All right, so up first is really understanding and utilizing proficiency scales. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they are, and then we'll get in more precisely how you can use them to differentiate instruction. But the purpose of proficiency scales is that you have these big, broad standards, and proficiency scales do an excellent job of breaking down the standards into a sequence of leveled learning goals. So kind of you read them from the bottom up, and it's the bottom of the proficiency scale is kind of the most basic skills, and then it works it all the way up to grade level, and then going deeper in that grade level understanding. So we take those big wordy standards and we break them down into manageable bite-sized pieces for teachers and students. And so it clearly indicates a progression of skills or understanding at each level. So it essentially provides a guide for teachers, students, parents, essentially all stakeholders on what it takes to be successful on a particular content standard or skill. So in essence, it kind of removes that ambiguity about what it means to master a standard. So that really is big in the equity aspect because that proficiency scale provides all teachers across the state of Alabama with a common understanding and a common goal to get at mastery of that standard. And if all teachers have that common understanding, then essentially all students in the state of Alabama would be all working towards that same goal as well. So there are benefits to teachers and students for proficiency skills. And so with teachers, it really helps teachers communicate the learning targets and success criteria. So that either if you're talking to a parent or a principal or a student, you're clearly labeling what it means to be successful with that skill or content standard. And then it helps to effectively connect all the activities and strategies and assessments towards the ultimate learning goal or mastery of that standard concept or skill. But it also has benefits for the students, because if all teachers have that same understanding and can relay that to students, then students now know exactly what they're expected to learn and to master for that standard or skill. And so when they know what it is that is expected of them, then they're more able to tell you or the teacher where they are in that learning process. Because remember, the proficiency scales is levelized scales building from the most basic foundation all the way up to that grade level. And so kids are able to use that scale to say, I'm really at a level 1.5, or I might be at a level 2. I'm not quite at a level 3, and the levels will mean more to you in a minute. But it really allows them to be able to be active participants in their own learning and be able to tell the teacher or a parent or a resource teacher or anybody exactly where they are in relation to that skill or content that is needed for proficiency skills. One thing I do want to talk about before I turn it over to Kim is that these proficiency skills, the ones that are currently available, are only for the 2016 critical standards. And so those are standards that we have identified in each grade level about what is essential for them to master to be successful at the different levels of mathematics afterwards. So just know that the ones currently available are only for the critical. However, upcoming years and with the new transition to the new course of study, we will have the 2019 for all standards available for teachers. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim so she can talk to you more about the levels of the proficiency skills.
Yeah, so and before I get into that, I just wanted to say too, when I was teaching math, I would have loved to have had something like this because it's all lined up for me. All these statements, things that I might would have thought of, but this is really putting it at those levels so that I could clearly see where a student was. Okay, little Susie can do this. That's a level 3, but everything else is down here at 2. Okay. So we need to work towards these specific things to fill in those gaps and get her up to that level 3. That really would have helped me. So I would encourage you to look into using these. It really isn't an extra. It streamlines the process that you're already using. And in my opinion, just makes life simpler. For special education teachers, we're required to progress monitor. We're required to collect data. And this is exactly what a proficiency scale does. It builds students' self-esteem because it's showing them the things that they can do. But there's that accountability piece put in as well because it shows them what they need to be working on. And it allows everybody to be on the same page: parent, general ed teacher, special ed teacher, case manager, if you're talking about a student with special needs. Everybody is looking at the same information. And I just think that's really helpful. And then looking at these levels, It sounds like I'm going in the wrong order, but it's just the way that my brain works as I look at these levels. I start by looking at the level 3 because that's grade level content. And it's put into meaningful terminology, which I love. And this is the target for all students. Some of our students are going to go deeper and they're going to get into that level 4, to that category. But some are going to be missing prerequisite skills and they may need instruction at the level 2 to build them up or even further below that. So that's kind of how I look at those. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I do want to emphasize the level 3 is the target for your grade level of where we want kids, all kids, to be before they leave you. And I want to be very clear that the level 4, the going deeper, does not mean I jump to my next grade level. It does not mean that. It means I go deeper with that standard. Okay, so just, I don't want y'all to have the misconception that just because they can do grade level and that go deeper means, oh, we're now moving on to the next grade. That is not the case. We give them opportunities, whether it's projects, different things that they can do to really showcase the understanding of that concept of skill. And then those level 2 prerequisites, that is where, if I'm a classroom teacher, that is where I need to start, because if kids don't have that level 2 understanding, then I can't be building on a faulty foundation for that level 3. So as a teacher, I've got to figure out ways to embed that level 2 understanding while getting to my level 3 grade level content understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now this is an example of a proficiency scale that includes content from our curriculum guide for essentials. We have these right now for grades 6 through 8 and have plans to expand that. But right now you can just see in the middle school grades kind of what that looks like. It really breaks down the content standard even further into those necessary skills. And this is a perfect example of collaboration between general education and special education, as these scales were developed out of a partnership between special ed services and AMSTI. So we have our content expert and we have our special ed teacher coming together even to make these scales so that you can use them and collaborate in your school and in your system. We hope to have something like this for alternate achievement standards as well, but definitely plan to expand on the 2019 standards to include some of those essential skills. And we know that some students, not just students with disabilities, have gaps or they're not skilled in some of those basic processes that are necessary, maybe even for prerequisite skills that are on the proficiency scales. This type of content would be found in that level 1 box. And you'll notice there's even a level 0 box. And that's just examples of help that you might give a student if they're demonstrating very little to no skill in this area. That's kind of an example of where can I start to even pull them up into that level 1 category. Is there anything you would add to that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize something you said, that as a classroom teacher, and the school I taught in, there were kids, most of my kids did not come to me on grade level. So having a document like this that really takes that standard and breaks it into all sizes that fits all the different levels and abilities in my classroom. If I were a classroom teacher, I would have loved to have had this, especially a new teacher, because you're just trying to figure it out on your own. But this really does break it down, and it is a perfect collaboration between content specialists and special ed teachers. And so it really does embed a wide range of skills that are needed to build up to that level 3 grade level content where we want to get all kids at before they leave to go to the next grade level or course. I do want to say a couple of things about proficiency scales, is that these can really help, since they're levelized, really help you as a teacher to determine and build your small groups. So, what groups need to be together? Well, I can use that either, I've got all my level 2s together. I've got all my level 1s to try to build them up to level 2, all my level 2s to try to build up to level 3. So I really can build my small groups or stations around these levels. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's a lot of sample activities that I could use for those different levels. So this helps me, gives me resources, ideas of things that I could focus on at the different levels and embed in station rotations in my classroom, small group learning. I can also use this to group my students either homogeneously or heterogeneously throughout the unit of instruction for this particular standard. These proficiency scales are also very, very, very useful and wish I had them when I was in the classroom for parent conferences. Again, as I said earlier, it takes the ambiguity out. All stakeholders know what it takes to be successful for that particular concept or skill. And so they're extremely, extremely important and can be used as a variety of ways in your classroom to support what you're already doing. As Kim indicated, this is not something extra. We're already doing a lot of this, but this kind of streamlines the process.
Yeah, definitely. So I saw in the chat box we had someone asking about getting those 6th through 8th grade proficiency scales, and that is what we're going to talk about now, where you can find them. If you are in Schoology, if you have access, then you should have access to a group in there called course content. And inside that group, there is a folder with proficiency skills for all subject areas. If you don't have access to Schoology, it is something that your district should be able to get to you, but we do know that that is not the case in some areas. And so if you don't have that, you can go to the ALSTE Live Binder for a lot of resources there, and a lot more than just proficiency scales. If you have not seen the Live Binder or the ALSTE Digital Learning Repository, I would encourage you to go there as well. And then Elizabeth can tell you also where you can find them on AMSTI's website.
So we quickly realized, because teachers were reaching out to us, that their district didn't merge down their access to the rights to the folder in Schoology or Schoology. And so we put the math and science ones on the AMSTI.org Facebook page. So you can either scan it and it will take you there, or I will pop in the chat real quick, the website, AMSTI.org. And if you scroll down on that website, on the main page, you don't even have to click anywhere. If you scroll down on that main page, you'll see a picture, like the image on the right of the screen. That is where the proficiency scales are located. So it will just take you to a folder where they're located, so you don't have to go through Live Binder or Schoology to access the proficiency scale. So if you can, if your district didn't merge it down to where you have the rights and permissions, you can get math and sciences from AMSTI.org's website.
Hey, and I also put down in the chat how to get to that Live Binder in case any of you are interested in that and haven't seen it. So now we're going to talk about the roles of teachers. Elizabeth is going to talk to you more about the role of the general education teacher, and then I will go into more detail on the role of the special education teacher.
So very broadly, my role as a general ed teacher would be to formatively assess my students on that level 2 knowledge. Because remember I said we can't be building on a faulty foundation. I've got to look at those level 2s and make sure they have that knowledge before I just jump into my grade level. And so I've got to do some formative assessment with my students to see, do they have these skills? Which skills do they know? Which skills are they that completely don't know? Which skills are they just a little weak in? So that I can start addressing that in my class. And then also, it's my responsibility to collaborate with the special education teacher on the goals for the unit or lesson. If they don't know the goals, how can they help ensure that students are meeting that goal? And then also collaborate on different strategies and tools needed for that unit or lesson to help support students being successful learning this material. And then last but not least, always implement and evaluate daily lessons and accommodations. So daily, I should be thinking to myself, is this accommodation working for Susie? You know, is it working? Is it not working? Going back to the drawing board and constantly communicating back and forth. And that should really be a fifth bullet. Communicate back and forth about that success based on the data or lack of success with the special ed teachers so that we can modify and do different accommodations if it's not working.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting into the special education teacher's role, you work with the IEP team to select accommodations. The general education teacher is part of that team. They have responsibilities as well, and it really is our job to work with them and make sure that they understand this child. Because you as the special ed teacher are going to have a lot of the data on eligibility that's been done and all of that. So it's our job to communicate those types of things that the gen ed teacher would need to know. We assist the general education teacher with strategies for differentiation. And like we've been saying, we collaborate. And that's one of the most important things, is that collaboration and that relationship to implement and to evaluate the accommodations. So we don't just choose accommodations and say, this is what Susie Q is going to get for the rest of the school year. There's a back and forth. There's reviewing and revising what we're doing with this child if it's not working. And then we provide, of course, that specially designed instruction. And that falls on us to close those gaps. So they're in the general education classroom, and that teacher is formatively assessing, working with that child toward the grade level content. Then where there are these weaknesses, we take our time to try to close gaps. And we'll talk more about some of the other things you can do in that time too. And this is not an exhaustive list. Ownership, so to speak, of providing appropriate education is really shared among a team of people that work with this child. General ed, special ed, we both play really critical roles. And all children are children first. If they happen to have a disability, then they're children with disabilities second. But they're students in the class just like the other students.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that proficiency scales are not just for students with disabilities. It is for all students. All students should know the success criteria so that they can monitor themselves. So, but the proficiency scales really do help bridge and make that collaboration between general ed and special ed, because it is clearly indicated what are the markers for success, and then everybody's working towards the same goal.
Okay, so now we are going to introduce our sample student to you all to look at for today and discuss some traits about this student. So when you see the next slide come up, we're going to give you just a minute to kind of look over these statements about this child. And these are just example statements that a teacher might have made about this student. So as you're looking at these statements, think about what sticks out to you. What do you know about this student, or what do you notice that would give you pause? And you can put that in the chat box. I'm going to go back a slide so they can still see the statements, and then feel free to type in there some things that you notice. There we go. Don't be shy.
So what do we know about Candace?
Okay, so she hasn't done well in math in the past. It appears that math is the area of concern. Anything else? Okay, what I think noticed is that she is vocal and engaged in history class. And, you know, we would, with a real child, know a lot more about the student, but that's kind of making me think that maybe we have a good handle on reading or vocabulary, because that is a lot of what we do in history class. So maybe those aren't areas where we struggle. I also noticed that she works well following a list of steps, so we can leverage that skill in the math classroom. That she is weak in math facts and number sense, and maybe has low self-esteem when it comes to her math ability. Those were kind of the things that I was noticing. Did you have anything else, Elizabeth?
No, but I pretty much saw the same things. And then what triggered me too is that she answers impulsively. A lot of times, students who struggle in mathematics, they do answer impulsively for a variety of reasons, and so that struck out to me as well.
Mm-hmm. So now we are going to, in just a short little conversation, model a type of collaboration that might occur with this student, or model how you could collaborate as the general ed and the special ed teacher.
All right, Ms. Baker, we're about to start a unit connecting proportional relationships to algebra and function content areas. I would like to discuss with you the big ideas of the unit.
All right, great. If you can let me know what your goals are up front, that will help me to help Candace.
So we're going to begin working on Standard 9, which in 6th grade is on independent and dependent variables with graphs, tables, and equations. So here's our proficiency scale. Let's take a moment and look at our level 3, our grade level where we want to get all of our students, and particularly Candace. Let's look at level 3, and what do we notice or wonder about our level 3 grade level skills or concepts?
So it looks like a lot of the learning targets involve some level of understanding of math vocabulary. Candace actually learns vocabulary well with some visual supports. She's really good at remembering new terms once she's learned them, but she has not mastered solving equations, and she really struggles with basic math facts.
So yeah, I've noticed she struggled with basic math facts as well. But the overall goal is to get you right. The overall goal is to get that new terminology in familiar context. And so we will be working with tables, equations, and graphical representations again during this unit. So we have those 3 main representations, and we know that Candace tends to answer impulsively. Do you have any suggestions to help her really focus on creating the different representations?
I think some type of graphic organizer would help her and really might be helpful to keep the other students focused as well. That's been a tool that's worked with her in the past, and I can email you some of my favorites.
Great, thank you. I love getting new resources, and I also agree with you that I think this graphic organizer won't just help Candace, but really could help the rest of the students in the class as well. So based on the previous unit, we know that Candace struggled with basic operations and basic math facts. Are you okay with me providing her a calculator as an accommodation?
I think that'd be great. That would allow her to focus solely on the steps and the vocabulary that she needs to learn. And I think that in having that support, she'd be able to learn the content.
All right, so based on your experience with Candace, here are level 2 and 1 prerequisite skills. Which skills do you think Candace still struggles with the most?
I would say setting up a table of values given an equation. I'm not sure that she can do that independently.
What strategies do you suggest that I could use in the classroom to kind of help her?
She's very visual. It helps her to work through an example together with you or with a group, and then let her work through a similar example where she can use that demo as a guide. And she follows step-by-step guides really well. And she's very social when she's comfortable, so maybe she could work with a partner or in a small group.
Perfect. I do think that graphic organizer will definitely help Candace in providing that guide for her and that structure that she needs. I will definitely strategically pair Candace up with a partner that I think would be a good fit. And I'll monitor the progress daily and get back with you if we need to adjust anything.
Sounds good.
All right, so just sum it up. Part of our job as we're collaborating is to determine, strategies, skills, different things that we can work individually on with Candace. And so coming out of this conversation, there's a social emotional aspect of it. Peer collaboration. Candace seems to have low self-esteem in the math classroom. And so who would Candace work well with? She is social. We want to put her with someone who wouldn't be over dominating, where it would force her to shut down. And we won't put her with someone who barely talks, because we want her to get to talking in math class. So we've got to find that right fit for Candace. As well as a teacher, I can start building on that self-esteem by allowing her to present different findings in class or solution paths and methods, set her up for success when she shares out for the classroom, to help begin to build that confidence so that she can see herself as a doer of mathematics. So that's the more social emotional aspect of it. But getting to the content, we're going to provide those computational tools. We're going to provide the graphic organizer to help with those skills and concepts. And as a teacher, one thing that I'm huge about is chunking the content into bite-sized pieces. Mathematics can seem very overwhelming for students who are struggling in the math classroom. And so we can provide bite-sized pieces that they can digest without being overwhelmed, the easier it is for actually the teacher, and it actually helps the student as well. And then really ground all of that content in real world applications so that students aren't asking, well, when will I ever use this? Why do I need to know this? If it's grounded in real world applications, they see the relevancy and the purpose. And then provide a lot of opportunities throughout the unit for reasoning and sense making. And so that's generally done with more open-ended questions where kids can answer and enter the problem in a variety of ways. Kim, do you want to add anything before we move on?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add, you mentioned providing that computational tool. I just want to add in there that it is okay for a child to be provided a calculator. There is a lot of higher level math that can be done if we can get past that weakness in basic math skills. That doesn't mean that that's not something you could work on in the resource room if you wanted to, or if that was identified as a need for that child. But to give them access to that content in the classroom, providing that tool can be a great idea. You do want to take some time to make sure they understand how to use that tool, though. One thing that Elizabeth and I have talked about is, even a teenager doesn't always know how to operate a calculator correctly to do what they're needing to do. So you may need to take some time in the resource room and go through some problems using the calculator, model, make sure that the child knows how to use it to do what they need to do in the classroom. But providing that tool can really be a great thing for a child, so they're not having to focus on remembering those math facts that they struggle with. They can focus on the steps to get to what they need to do in the classroom, and even can focus more on the real world aspect of it and what are we actually doing. It's okay if they have not gotten those basics, as long as we're using what they do know to help them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then speaking of like just the calculator in general, remember those level 2s are prerequisite skills. That's okay on prerequisite skills to provide them a computational tool, because it's a prerequisite skill. That's not the skill directly related to your standard. That's something that comes before it. And so we want to provide kids with either graphic organizers, tools, something to build them up so they can actually work on grade level standards. We can't just continue to say, all right, you don't know your multiplication facts, so today, even in 6th grade, we're going to work on multiplication facts. We can't do that. That's not part of our standards. So we have to provide tools and other resources to kind of level the playing field so they can access grade level content.
Yeah, and just jumping off of that, one of the things we've talked about in special ed when we've been talking about accommodations and selecting appropriate accommodations is think about the target skill versus the access skill, if that makes any sense. So like the target skill is not her ability to multiply or divide. The target skill was something else. but her barrier is the multiplication or the division or whatever. So that's an access skill. We can accommodate that to be able to get to this target. So anyway, that's just a way to think of it.
As a content teacher, I care more, can she use graphs, tables, and equations and understand independent and dependent variable in this particular unit than she can add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Like, I want to know, can you do the different representations and tell me what those representations mean in the context of the problem? You know, do I want every kid in my class to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide? Absolutely. But that's not my grade level, but that is something I definitely, the students can work on in remediation, intervention, different opportunities for that, but not necessarily in my content class, because that's not the content we're working on.
Right, exactly. So to kind of just wrap it up, what we've talked about today, we talked about the purpose and benefits of proficiency scales. We've talked about, sorry, my computer is talking to me. We've talked about the roles of the general education and the special education teachers. And we've given that example of collaboration to promote better outcomes for students. And that's just a brief example of what you can do really very quickly using that proficiency scale. In my opinion, it really helps you to collaborate because you know exactly what you're looking at. So we're not spinning our wheels. We're talking about these specific skills and what can we do to help this student get from where they are to whatever our target is. So those are the three things we've tried to hit on today. We wanted to leave a little bit of time in case there were any questions, discussion. We would love to hear from you.
So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat box as well.
Seeing none, I assume that we have done a superb job of explaining this. No, but really, feel free even now to unmute, type us something in the chat. We do have a question about sending the PowerPoint that we used today.
We'll have to ask our administrators about the PowerPoint, but this is recorded and will be available, so you'll be able to watch this this session, and so that will be accessible through the State Department website, and so you will have access to it, but we'll have to double check on the actual PowerPoint resources.
When we get to the very last slide, it'll have our email addresses, so you can always email one of us just so we have your contact information and we can get back with you about where you can find that recording when it's posted and everything. We're hearing that it's helped to strengthen the bond between general and special ed. And I'm so glad, because that is definitely our goal. Definitely our goal. So this slide here, if there's anything else, again, just feel free to unmute, type it in. This QR code here, if you turn your camera on your phone, you should be able to scan it and then open it up in Safari. And this is a way to stay connected with us in special ed services. If you don't get that, I know sometimes they seem to work really well and sometimes they don't. Actually, I'm checking it now and I'm not sure it's going to pull up. If you don't get that, stay in touch with us on the State Department website. Special Ed Services also has a YouTube channel. If you just look for ALSDE Special Ed Services, we put things out on YouTube. We also have a Twitter account. I'll type in the chat what that handle is. It's TA Tweets, Technical Assistance Tweets is what that stands for. There's several ways to get us. Definitely go to that live binder as well. It has all kinds of information for either general or special ed teachers. Specifically to special ed, there's a little yellow tab, has a ton of digital resources that are more specific to special ed.
Yeah, and so you can always go to AMSTI.org, and there's a lot more resources for you there as well. I could spend a whole nother hour just explaining all the resources on the website, But please, if you're looking for resources, check that out. Not just for proficiency skills, but there are some really good resources to help you or help your teachers if you're a coach or district leader in the classroom. And so the QR code does not work.
No, I'm not sure why. I just tried it. I'm going to put y'all a link in the chat for some of the stuff. So the Twitter account would be one of them, and we've listed those there that you would have gotten. And then this is our, that's coming through. Yeah, that's our link to our YouTube channel where we try to put some things out periodically. Some of it's specific to instruction, some of it's more toward the IEP process. There's kind of a variety there. And then if you are in Schoology, you can get to us that way too. And I think if you were here when I sent that live binder link, you probably already have that. I'll put it in there one more time. All right, and this is our, these are our email addresses. You can contact us with questions to get you linked up with resources, anything you might need. We are here for you. Are there any further questions before we sign off today? All right. Well, thank you all for being here today. Hopefully this has been helpful. Keep looking in Power Schools and Live Binder, AMSTI for more upcoming trainings. They are having these bite-sized PD trainings weekly, I guess. Is it weekly?
Yeah, every week we're doing them. I know in November we have a new one that I'm really excited about for 6-8, which is focusing on the ACAP and preparing teachers to prepare their students to take the ACAP. So if you are a 6-8 teacher or know someone who's a 6-8 math teacher, I highly recommend you sharing that information with them. That will be coming up in November. But if you don't have any questions, feel free to leave the meeting, but I'll stay around until the last person's here just to make sure that no one has a question that they might have been wanting to ask, not in front of everybody else. When will the session be on ACAP? I will have to look. The State Department puts out a big PDF file of all the bite-sized PD for that month. And so I would just look in that bite-sized PD calendar or catalog, or you can look in Power School as well eventually. But that catalog has not been sent out yet for November. In about a week, it will be sent out, and then we will know all of our dates and times.
So about to try to see.
I knew Keisha would ask. Hey, Keisha.
I was trying to see. So on the live binder, there is a tab that says bite-sized PD events monthly. I'm sure that it will be updated for November because right now it's that same, I think, PDF that you're referencing, Elizabeth, but it's has a link to get to Power School. And right now it's showing September and October. But I believe you can also get to recordings of the ones that have already occurred.
So where did you see that? So I'm in Live Binder. I just want to make sure everybody knows where to get to it. So I'm in Live Binder. Where did we go? Where were you looking?
There is a little green tab, like almost on the very last row that says bite-sized PD events -monthly.
Okay, and so I click that, and then it takes me to that PDF document, but this is for October.
Yes, it's September and October, but I'm thinking that they will probably update that before long, and you could find it there. And then let's see, it looks like if you go after you click that, if you go back up, you can see little kind of dark yellow buttons that have recorded sessions. If anyone wanted to look back at what's already been done.
Yeah, feel free to look back. There are some good PDs that have already been done in August and September that you could easily use if you're a curriculum leader. You could send it out to your teachers and say, hey, watch this, answer those questions, kind of like accountability, reply to the email with the answer to this question so they actually watched it. There's different things that you can do in light of COVID outside of our normal thinking about PD.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Ms. Jackson, Ms. Smith, if y'all have no questions, feel free to leave the meeting or feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.